There's that little pause before. It really tricks me sometimes. Podcasters Roundtable, the audio podcast as seen live in video. It's different than a video podcast, right? Round 55, making tough decisions. So at some point during your podcast journey, if that's what you want to call it, you're going to have to make a really hard decision, right? Either that could be to stop podcasting. Maybe you decline a good opportunity that could move you forward, but it's something you don't agree with. Sponsorship, I guess that could be. Maybe you decide to delete an episode that it just didn't work out, and the person you had on, you just don't want to publish it, right? Could be a very tough decision. Or maybe you have to fire a co-host. Or maybe start over altogether. Anyways, there's lots of tough decisions you may have to make or may have already made. And that's really the beauty of this show, the Roundtable. So many of you have built up an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to podcasting, and that's really the goal here, right? It's to get, that's my crutch, right? I gotta stop doing that. The goal is to get as many of you as possible on the show so you can share all that experience. So go to podcastersroundtable.com/guest and find out how to appear on a future roundtable and submit discussion topics you'd like to chat about live. So remember, this is not a how-to show, but more like a what for, right? The whys, oh, there it is, the whys of podcasting, all right? It's those issues you face daily as a podcast producer. So one quick announcement, International Podcast Day is September 30th. Dave, Daniel, and I are on are we on the board, I guess you could say? T-shirts are available. Okay, so go to teespring.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. Search International Podcast Day. You'll see the awesome logo. Get one. We don't get any kickback for that. We're just trying to spread the word of podcasting. So let's meet the roundtable, starting with my co-hosts, Dave and Daniel. Dave, welcome back to the roundtable.
Yeah, Ray, it's weird. It's like I was really looking forward to seeing you at Podcast Movement, and yeah, I saw you like for, 10 seconds maybe? Same thing with Daniel.
Yeah.
So, but Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, glad to be here. Should be a fun discussion tonight.
Yeah, and you just made a very, very tough decision, and we're gonna dive into that a little bit.
All right.
see how much Dave wants to dive into it, but I appreciate you making that decision just for the roundtable.
That was
it. Great timing. All right, and of course, Daniel J. Lewis, welcome back.
Thank you. I've had my share of tough decisions about my podcast, for my podcast, and even against my podcast. So this will be fun.
Very cool. And let's, of course, the most important part of the show, as I mentioned in the lead up there, let's meet the new roundtablers. We'll start off with a good friend of the community, another podcast about podcasting. Wait, Darrell, do you have a show about podcasting specifically? There's so many shows.
No, I don't, because and I've been asked to start one or asked why I don't have one, and my simple answer is the world doesn't need another podcast about podcasting. There are so many good ones out there already. Go find one of those. I'm happy to help you with your podcast, but I'm not doing a podcast about podcasting.
I agree. The community appreciates it, I think, or maybe they really do want one. I don't know. I think there's always space, but thanks for joining us. First time roundtabler. And last but certainly not least, new Hall of Famer, Danny Peña. Welcome to the roundtable, man.
Hey, thanks, guys. Big fan of the show. Been listening to it for a while now, and I remember Daniel J. Lewis was on Twitter like, "Hey, well, post a review on iTunes," and I did that after that. But yeah, man, I'm a big fan of the show, man. So thanks for inviting me, man.
That's right. I remember that now that you say it, and we did sort of push you into a review, but it's not like you hadn't heard the show before, right? We're not pushing people who haven't heard the show. If you are listening to the roundtable and you haven't left your review, let's get on that, right? I mean, I use Daniel's my podcast reviews. There's a plug. I'm plugging for Daniel now. He's got me programmed. Yeah. But I use my podcast reviews. If you leave one, I'm going to know about it. So please go leave a review. Say something nice about Dave. I don't care. Pretend I'm not here. Dave's the friendly one. Although I will say Dan Benjamin at Podcast Movement referred to me as the nicest guy on the internet. So clearly he just doesn't hang out with that many people on the internet. All right, let's jump into it again. Making tough podcast decisions. Hopefully, they're related to podcasting, but again, we can go anywhere with this. But I guess we should start off with Dave. We'll just jump right into the deep end there. Dave, you recently, like as of probably yesterday or a little sooner, had to make a very tough decision. You want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, I was stoked, to use a Pat Flynn verbiage here, to become the director of podcasting for the New Media Expo. Had a very interesting year putting that together, being the first year with NAB, and my first time in, kind of new kid on the block, and was kind of looking forward to this coming year now that I had a year behind me. And just instead of being kind of stoked for year number 2, I was kind of like, because my stepdaughter's getting married. There's a really good chance I'm going to move, even if it's from one part of Cleveland to another. And there are just a lot of things on my plate that are come up this year. And it's really, we're starting to kind of, push the wheels on the New Media Expo. And I was kind of like, oh, do I really want to? And I saw it was one of those where when it's a really big decision, that's not something you want to do overnight. So I thought about it for a week and, kind of sent out some stuff to the team and kind of see where we're going and where we're headed. And yeah, it's one of those where I am crossing my fingers, hoping that like 2 years from now I go, man, that was a dumb decision. But just in terms of it's a lot of time and a lot of things I want to do for the School of Podcasting in terms of maybe new products and new ways of doing that. And I started as a test at what I'm calling a castermind because, hey, isn't that cute? And working with just a small group of people, some group coaching, and that just is like, man, is this cool? This is really fun. And so it's just ones where you kind of go, well, there's money, there's fun and happiness, stress, lots of stress, and I just kind of went, and I talked to my wife, and she said, well, you're already stressed out and hasn't even started yet. And I went, it's a good point. And so, yeah, I sent a letter to Rick and said, it's not you, buddy, it's me, and I'm bowing out, and I'll do whatever I can to make it a smooth transition, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, not an easy decision to make, and I'm really hoping in about a year I go, that was dumb.
Yeah, it's tough. From behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Co-host here, we do this on a bi-monthly basis, and Daniel and I certainly got a front row seat for the trials and tribulations of that job. It's just hard. It's a huge event, right? And so you have all of that stuff going on. I totally understand, and yeah, that has to be rough. I mean, it's a cool job to get, right? I mean, you're in charge of podcasting for the New Media Expo, and how, what was the real decision there to be made? Were you, do you think people are gonna look at you like, oh, Dave gave up, or what's the decision there?
It was money versus stress.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, it's like, oh man, that could take a chunk out of the student loans, and just last year by the end of it, well, you saw it, man. I was,
yeah, you're toast.
Yeah, there are parts of it where Rick's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. Sometimes we couldn't get our schedules in sync, so communication wasn't always the easiest road. I know they tried a couple times to have meetings at 9 o'clock West Coast time because that was my lunch hour, so we'd get on the phone. So just they're great people to work with. I just was, it was a lot of weird stuff. And then the one thing. It's an awkward. There's going to be an awkward time when you have to tell people that you really want to say yes to, and you got to say not this year. And that as a guy that likes to be friends with everybody was a hard pill to swallow.
What about the future of, the conference podcasting, at least podcasting side of the conference? What do you think?
What do I think?
Were you worried about leaving that out of your hands, right? You are a big figure in I would say our community, obviously, right? And a lot of people trust you with the future of something like that.
Yeah, it was going to be interesting this year, especially. Now that we have the NAB thing down, and I'm trying to figure out. I know we got a lot of feedback last year on trying to keep kind of the conference a little more together. We were a little spread out last year. And I know Rick has heard all this, so I'm just trying to figure out what we're going to implement. I think it'll continue on. It's been a great conference for however many years. I'm not sure how many years it's been going on, going back all the way to Ontario, California. And, one of the things I said is I was hoping I just didn't break it. You know what I mean? Because Cliff did a great job before him, Paul Culligan. I think Michael Stelzner took a stab at it for a year. So I'm not the only person to walk away. I took it, one of the things I wanted, number one, it looks good on a resume, and I thought it would kind of elevate my exposure. And one of the things that kind of helped is when I was at Podcast Movement, and I don't know if it's because it was because of the New Media Expo or what, but people kept saying that they'd heard of my show. So the exposure thing, not that I'm like all that in a bag of chips, but I was like, okay, maybe I already have this level. Do I need NMX to keep me there now? And I was like, maybe, how much more exposure can I wring out of that title? So that was something that played into it.
Here's a good one. So Pilar Orti, who's been on the Roundtable before, in the middle of the night. She's an overnighter. I need that special badge. She says, here's a great way of finding out what's the right decision to make. Heads quit, tails stay. Toss the coin. What comes up is not important. What's crucial is, how did you feel when you saw that side of the coin? Relieved or disappointed? There's your answer. Have a great show. That's kind of fun. If you tossed a coin and it'd come up, how many coins did you toss, Dave? How many times did you go back and forth?
I know it was weird when I actually said the phrase in my last episode, and I said I've resigned as the director, and it came out of my mouth, and it was kind of like, yeah, okay, I can live with that. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we'll see. One of the fun things I'm going to be going through this year is empty nest syndrome, because my youngest stepson just went to Purdue, so my marriage is going to take on a whole new dynamic, and if the last couple weeks are any inclination of how that's going to go, I'm going to be needed at home a little more. So that was definitely a factor in it. My wife will be the first to say that she's not handling it well. So that was another factor, And my first marriage, I was a workaholic, and that's one of the biggest reasons why that went. And I just thought, okay, here's another time where I'm looking at it saying my family's going to need me now, not only for the wedding, but for all this other stuff going on. And in the end, yeah, I could be the director of new media of NMX with no wife and no kids. And I'm like, that's not a good way to go either. So there are a lot of factors in it. It's hard to say it was just this or that. It was like this or that. And my wife has always been very understanding for the most part for my lovely hobby, as she calls it. Right. But whatever that thing you do. But it was just one that I was like, and I just, it was a matter of, can I live with this? Am I going to look back in 3 months? And so here's the thing. I will look back and regret it if I don't take advantage of the time that I now have, that I'm not Spino. So if I look back in 3 months and I don't have a new product, or my website isn't updated, or whatever it is, all the things that I said, okay, if I don't do this, now I'm going to have time to do this. I've got to hold myself accountable.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And that's kind of, I was kind of wondering there, what is the takeaway for podcasters? And I think, I think that's it. We said at the end there. And what we do at that time, or how will you flip that decision, which is a very tough decision, into something completely positive for you. Not that it wasn't positive to start with. So
right.
That's cool stuff. So, let's move on to, Fred Castaneda left a great a comment or a question, one of those decisions to make in the chat leading up. And you can find him at podcastreporter.com and a million other sites. He's a prolific podcaster. He says whether to start your monetization with a freemium model, then move to a premium model. Has anyone who monetizes their show?
I do right here.
And what,
but the thing, I started doing that since 2006. It was Libsyn that actually got us our first ad.
So you started without ads, right?
Yeah, I started without ads, and then eventually Libsyn contacted us and like, hey, we got you a sponsor. Because they got to see our stats. And from there, we just got ads from different companies. And now with the deal that we have with CBS Radio, they're the ones to actually handle that stuff. And we just give them the okay or not if we like it.
So what was the decision to take ads or not? Or was it a slam dunk for you guys?
The reason why we did it is because after a while, it's like I need better equipment. I would like to travel to different areas across the country. to cover events and stuff, and we didn't have the budget, and that was like the best decision we made, and it helped us big time to pay the bills, helped us pay the hotel, food, and especially our equipment. Throughout the years, we got better and better. We invested a lot more money on buying better equipment for us for events and stuff. So yeah, I think it's worth it. I feel that a lot of podcasters are afraid to do that. I don't see any issues with that, and you don't have to start.
What's the worry you think there? Then what's that tough decision that a podcaster has to make?
I'll tell you this: like when we started, a lot of podcasters was calling us like a sellout because we were getting ad money and stuff, and I don't see nothing wrong with that. It helped to pay the bills. I think that you don't have to start big, but maybe start with a local company around your area. I think that will help out to get their name out there, because maybe they don't have to push online and you do. I started off like that, with other businesses that I started like with promotional stuff in Miami. But it helped us big time, and from little by little, you add that part of your resume, and then eventually you're going to get that one big, company that's going to advertise and sponsor you, So I think it's good to start like that.
Yeah, let me ask, since you have experience with this, and I believe you've been vocally critical at some parts of this whole podcast awards thing, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
That decision to, I guess, the original podcast awards,
yes.
Your audience could nominate you, right? So you probably have all been up for a podcast award. Is there a tough decision to be made there to say, I'm going to put this out there and ask my audience over and over and over again, or is it just no problem? Like who had a tough time with that, I guess?
I had a big time. I was pretty pissed off because of the awards and stuff. And here's the thing. Like, out of all the podcasts, we've been nominated, I believe, every single year since 2006, all the way to now. And the reason is because our community members are always voting for us and everything, right? But then you'll get a bigger company, a bigger corporate a podcast that gets a lot more votes. They got a bigger audience, and they're always the ones that wins every year. And then after a while, it's like, man, why I'm spamming this to my audience? It's like, to me, it's like a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's not pissed that I didn't get the win of the award, but it's like, damn, I mean, give other people a chance. Like, I would like to see other podcasters win instead of the same people over and over. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not mad at the ones that won. That's cool. But like this awards, the Academy of Podcasters, I think that was great because, yeah, we didn't win, but I was happy to see somebody that I've never heard of win an award, give an opportunity for everyone. I think that if you do that, I think it will help the space big time,
Sure.
So let's share. Let's all share.
Definitely. Daniel, is there... What's the tough decision to be made there? Is there one?
Yeah, I've faced a tough decision before. Well, I have taken home one podcast award from
Are you
the
sure?
awards.
Do you have an award?
I think
right next to you, ready to...
I love your show, Daniel. It's cool. I love your show.
Well, and that one year that I won, it happened to be that the playing field was a lot more level, and some of the big name tech podcasts weren't in there, and so no one else had anyone else to vote for, so why does not vote for me? That's one way.
But you've always put yourself up, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
what we do is, since we have the whole network, Noodle Mix Network, we have several popular shows, and so we have a lot of leverage with these popular shows, and that's how most of our shows that we're asking to be nominated do make it into the nominations. In that, there are some hard decisions, like this last time, it was trying to figure out, okay, which podcasts do we want to go into the awards? Because we have now several podcasts that were qualified to be in the entertainment category. And we had to think about, okay, such and such podcast has made it before, but that's probably the one that has the best chance again. So should we bring another podcast up and focus on it just so we can say this podcast has also been nominated? Or should we go for what probably has the best chance? And
so how do you make that decision?
It was a combination of both things. And then I talked with my network hosts and I asked them, are you in support of this? This is what I'm thinking for us to do, to try and spread out the attention and yet still put forth our best shows in their appropriate categories. Does this seem okay with you? And all of the network hosts were in agreement. One was just a little bit disappointed, but yeah, I accept it. And that kind of thing is tough when these are the people that we're working together, and to say, I don't think your show has a chance because your show has half or a third of the audience of this other show.
Right. And Darrell, you run a network. What's a tough decision that you have made coming up through the years and all the podcasting you've done?
Yeah, we took a very similar tact to the way that Daniel did with podcasting awards. I think the most difficult decision we've had to make over the years is when we were just a fledgling network. I think Golden Spiral Media had just been formed. We started out as the Fringe podcast, podcasting about the TV show Fringe. We started a second podcast called Cutting the Cable for cable cutters, and it was going really well. And it was at about that point where we decided let's make a brand around these and kind of.
Were you the first cable cutting podcast? Because there are others.
I think so. We
Okay.
were among the first because this was in 2009ish, maybe 2000 that we did that. It was a while ago, but I don't think we were the first. And I had a strategy meeting with my co-owner. He owned 50% of the company and of Golden Spiral Media, and I owned 50%. And we had a strategy meeting and developed a path forward to create two new shows and move forward with the other ones that we had already created. And we put a lot of thought, a lot of preparation into those. And then 2 weeks after we finally launched, his job took a major turn. And we thought we would just have to kind of reconfigure everything and figure out because we had all of our recording schedules down, how we would rotate in shows. It was going to be a well-oiled machine. And as it turned out, his schedule was so hectic, he was traveling so much, it was sporadic, it was unpredictable, that the two of those shows that we had just launched died right out of the gate. And that's a decision that I can't say I regret it to this day, because I don't know what different decision we could have made. We didn't ever tell anybody for the longest time that these shows aren't coming back, because we thought they were, and we probably thought for too long that they would eventually come back. So that's kind of a regret that I have, but it was tough to figure out, what are we going to do with these? Are we just going to let it go, or are we going to bring another co-host? One of them called Dad Hacker, which was just getting amazing response from our audience. It was his brainchild. He was the, in fact, when I bought his share of the company a couple of years ago, and he owns Dad Hacker, that was the exclusion, because it was his brainchild, and we just never got out of the gate with it, and it was a hard decision to figure out.
Yeah, I think lead us into a good transition there, which we've talked about. I think maybe round 50, where we talk about rebranding your podcast, but the sort of decision or non-decision to pod fade, right? One of my toughest decisions over time has been to let go of a show. And so tough that I kind of didn't make it. I left one show dangling in the wind. I thought that it would come back. I never said goodbye, which is terrible. I have another show kind of like that, which I do see coming back, but again, just kind of went away. I must say, Dave, he co-hosted the show. He sort of was a guest host, and then the show kind of petered out. So I'm not blaming Dave, but I'm just, I'm just saying. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I mean that decision to let a show go, right? Who has let, how do you make that decision? For me, I didn't make the decision. I kind of just went away, and that's bad.
Well,
Yeah,
I almost stopped. Well, go for it, Dave. My bad. Go for it.
No, that's all right. I have one that I still consider. I do and I don't. It's like once a month, if that. That's the Marketing Musician. That's my first podcast. It's like killing your baby.
It's your baby, yeah.
Yeah. But I've had other shows that I did the one, I think I made it to 6 episodes, and I was like, this is not fun. This is not what I thought it was going to be, and I just punted. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say thanks for listening. I was just like, all right, and we're done. And see. So, Danny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I had a show before Gamer Tag Radio, but this was like, I don't consider it a podcast. It was more like internet radio. It was like streaming. It was called PSO Radio. It was based on a video game for the Sega Dreamcast that came out in '99. I did that for a while, and it was fun. I don't know. After a while, I got too busy and stuff, and then I stopped. And then 3 years later, I launched Gamertag Radio. But in the past, I almost stopped Gamertag Radio. And the reason why I almost did was because I was very stressed with things that has been going on behind the scenes and stuff, especially trolls or like one time we interviewed one of the top guys at Microsoft, and we basically kind of leaked out some news based on an interview that we had on our podcast, and then eventually people found out it was like a very small announcement. They thought it was going to be something big. So once we leaked it, they were like attacking us and stuff, and I got so stressed out, man. I was getting attacked everywhere, man. And eventually my girlfriend was the one that talked to me behind the scenes, like, this is your thing, don't stop, do your thing, and I kept on going. But it could get very stressful, man, with those trolls, man, you know, giving you bad reviews and all that stuff, and man, it's
I was just listening to The Verge. Dan Benjamin has a show called Pipeline, and he was interviewing, is it Niall Patel? How do you say that? I'm saying it wrong.
I've always said Neil.
Is it Neil? I think it's there's an accent there.
Okay.
Anyways. We'll go Deal. He, The Verge just shut down comments, like straight up, like, and it's been like 2 weeks, and maybe that's an old episode, I don't know, but he had been 2 weeks after doing this in a major site and said it was okay, and I could tell it was there was a tough decision to be made there. I don't know if anyone else has shut down comments or made an social account private. Has anyone done anything like that?
I haven't. I know Michael Hyatt did, which was really shocking because he always had a question at the end of his show and said, leave your answer in the comments. And I think what he's done now, I think he directs people to his Facebook page. So he's still getting that input. I'm not sure. I guess by doing it on Facebook, you have to know who the person is.
Right. But so that's that sort of tough decision, right? To decide, you're stressed out like Danny was at some point, like we all get, and you're thinking, should I turn it all off? Should I stop? Should I just amend things? I had a forum that was just overcome with spam, and it was doing really well. And I thought, man, do I really want to let this thing go? But it was starting to control my life. So it wasn't really a tough decision, other than the fact that I kind of just cut off that community from itself. Right? Has anyone else had to make that decision?
We did that a couple years ago. This is, I believe, like 4 years ago. We shut down our forums, and it was really active, man. Super active. And the reason why I did that is because a lot of people were on social media, Twitter, Facebook, other places, and I feel that talking to our community through Twitter is a lot easier because there's more like one-on-one, and plus there was a lot of spam too, man. It was getting ridiculous with the spam.
Yeah, we shut down.
We shut down our forums, and man, a lot of people in our community were extremely pissed that we did that. But it's like I think we did.
What's your how do you come back to that?
I'm like, hey, look, just keep in touch. We have email, we are on Facebook, we're a lot of places. You can even call us if you don't want to email us. Call our voicemail, and we'll stay in touch. I think by doing that, I think it's a lot better than just having a forum there. And look, we've done events in the past, and we promoted through social media, and eventually we had like 1,000 people on one of our events and stuff, and that was all social media. So you don't need forums. To me, that's more like the early days before social media. But I think we made the right decision. So
go ahead, Dave.
Well, I had the same exact problem. I've tried forums twice. This is before Facebook, and at both times they just get overrun with spam. And a lot of work too. You got to feed them to get people talking.
They are a lot of work. So one common theme we have here on this roundtable, and sort of put together, crafted by me, is we all just got back from Fort Worth, Texas. 2015, we were at Podcast Movement. Now, this is a decision we all have to make, to go, right, to spend our money. We've talked about conferences, I think, at least twice on the roundtable, but it's a tough decision. You see all the people in your community, this community, they're going. I have a picture standing there with Mark Maron, right? But really, it's all about all the people. It's Danny. I met you, I think it was the first time we met in person.
And that was a very awkward moment where we met too.
I wasn't awkward I don't remember. Did I do something?
Do you remember?
Weird? I give you the
No,
weird
remember?
man. Like,
No, because I just got to the hotel and I left my credit card inside
oh,
of
that's right.
the
You
taxi.
lost your credit
And
card. Yeah.
so he left. I'm like, oh my god, I don't remember like I tried to contact different companies and then eventually I found the right one and he came back and bought my credit card back. But at
Yeah.
the same time, Ray was trying to talk to him. I'm like, Ray, hey, hi, I'm kind of stressed right now.
I knew you're stressing.
Yeah,
I've done that, so it's very stressful.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
do we make the decision? I am lucky then that I produce podcasts for a living for a great nonprofit in DC, and they send me to some conferences, not all of them, but I get to go to one a year. So it's an
Hmm.
easy decision for me this time. But had I
Hmm.
had to pay for that myself, it may be very different. So Darrell, you have a unique position that you had a table there, right, representing your company. So what was the decision? Was it an easy decision to go, or the investment in that? I mean, you're putting even more. You're spending money on a table. So what's that decision like, or was
Oh,
it tough?
it was an easy decision for
All
me.
right.
I had I started doing podcast production for other podcasters full time a little over 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now. And so I was doing it as my full-time job when I was at Podcast Movement last year, and the thought had never occurred to me that I could even look into a booth or see what a vendor space would be like. That it was nothing I ever thought about until I showed up at the conference and saw two other companies there that do what I do, and they both have booths, and I was kicking myself. And I vowed then and there that next year I would be ready. I would be ready, and then so it was a no-brainer for me. My company has grown a lot since then. I mean, a year ago at the conference, I was doing everything under my podcast network name, which is Golden Spiral Media, and since that time I've separated those out, and now I have Pro Podcast Solutions. That is the work that I do for other podcasters. So I'm kind of glad that from that point that I hadn't put that other brand name out there.
Yeah, I think I kind of asked you. You were sitting at the
Mhm.
conference had ended.
Yeah, we didn't
Tables were
talk until the
clear.
conference was over.
Everybody was gone, man. It
Yeah,
was like just me, you, and a couple guys packing up the floor.
yeah.
And in fact, you told me a very emotional story. It was very cool. I wish I had been filming it because it was powerful. But I think I asked you about the return on that investment and if you thought, because I actually don't know that I personally knew someone before that had a table. We know Libsyn and those guys, right? They're big companies.
Right.
But you're on your own. You're running your own company, and you came from, just being a podcaster. And I don't know enough about your past. Maybe that's not true, but it seemed like a bigger decision. I was curious about that return, but it sounds like it's a no-brainer for you. So not a
Well, it
tough
was,
decision,
but that doesn't mean that I didn't watch every penny that I spent.
right?
I didn't carefully consider every decision that was made, how much, what type of booth we would do, and we had embroidered shirts. I mean, we tried to do everything right, but at the same time, I didn't take the guy from Jurassic Park approach. I did spare every expense that I could. So that because I needed to get a good ROI, and it's yet to be seen what that will be. But I'm confident based on the way that I budgeted my expenses going in that I'll be able to get the ROI that I needed. But either way, I was going to be there. I just needed to make sure I did it in a way that was right for the way that I run my business
And if you
from the
didn't have a
financial.
business, if you're just a podcaster, are you going to that conference?
Oh, no question. If I hadn't had a business, podcast movement is definitely, New Media Expo is a bigger question now. Do I need both conferences as a podcaster? I think as a vendor I do. As a podcaster, do I need both? I don't know. For me, the biggest advantage to going to any conference, particularly these that are podcasting related, has always been the opportunity to meet new people, rekindle old relationships, and all the networking that goes on. And I think last year at Podcast Movement, I spent more than half of the time out in the hallways just talking with people. And so, from that point of view, I think both events are worth it if you can swing it,
Right. And
because the people you meet and the relationships that are formed are just invaluable.
definitely. And that's what we hear all the time, right? I mean, we could get the virtual ticket if you just wanted to catch the sessions, but we say it, it's almost cliche, but it is true. It is about meeting other people, but you don't always necessarily monetize that, right? The average podcaster might meet their friends there. They're going to spend $1,000, $2,000 to go. Is that really enough? Daniel, I mean, you're in business for yourself. You have been for over a year probably. You feel it's important to go to several or try to get to these conferences, but you have two conferences you want to go to. They're going to overlap, right? So it's a tough decision there. What do you say about all this conference going and money and which ones to attend?
Well, I am not rolling in the money. Let me stop that rumor before
What?
anyone thinks of starting it.
Daniel, you have a podcast award. I thought it comes with a Chevy and a bag of cash.
This thing is made out of plastic, not gold.
Oh,
Or, I don't know, polycarbonate, whatever, acrylic. But for me, I still am at that point where for every conference, it's looking at, oh man, this is going to cost this much to attend or speak at, this much to travel, hotel rooms, food, all of that stuff. It's going to take this much time away from my business. But for me, these kind of events are no-brainers for me because I need to be at these events because it is my business, not only to grow my business, but there are so many people there I know that I want to meet, that want to meet me. I feel like I have to be at these events. But for someone else out there who is not in the business of teaching people how to podcast and such, right. I think it is a harder question. In a way, then it might be more of a financial question, but think of what you're getting from this. So yes, maybe it costs $1,000. It's very likely that it costs $1,000 total or more to go to one of these things like Podcast Movement, which will be in Chicago in July.
That's 3 PR40s.
Yeah. Yeah, so think of it that way.
Gold plated.
Or think of it this way. For $1,000, you could get a few hours of consulting with any of the top podcast consultants, Dave, me, Darrell, anyone else out there. You could get a few or several hours of consulting. You go to this conference, and you're getting days of excellent training. That's the best material these people have at that point. You're getting this opportunity to ask these people questions, to engage, to come back inspired, more inspired than you would in a one-on-one consulting session, no matter how much you pay for that consulting session.
I was going to say, does it matter to someone who's not making money with their podcast, right? Great. They, inspired is good, right? I will say I come back from them every time ready to charge into the next year of producing content when you're like, this is really hard, doing this for 10 years or whatever it is you are doing this for, and it can be tough, right? So that helps, but it's going to be hard to make that money back in a way that your significant other says, ooh, that was a good investment.
And that's where you have to consider how much are you willing to put into this hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone spends money on their hobbies, and podcasting might be a hobby for you, so how much can you spend for you to enjoy this hobby? People who collect and build with model trains, they have some kind of budget. Maybe they go to conferences, they buy stuff for themselves. It's not really different. Well, actually, it is different in that you could make money with your podcast, but you don't have to. It can be purely a hobby.
Yeah. So does anyone else? I have a few here that came in. But
well, I wanted to say something very quick. That I know I mentioned this to Dave. I think Friday night we were at the bar.
Yeah.
We had like a great conversation about this, man. Like, I feel that I see it as an investment going to like all these events. Because look, I've been attending video game conferences and expos for years, right? 10 years. This was my first year attending Podcast Movement. First time attending a podcast event like this. And the reason why I went over there is because, besides the reward, of course, but I wanted to meet the community. Like, that to me is like very, very important. Like, I feel that meeting people is powerful, more than just chatting online, So my first event that I went to, I went with my brother. This was in 2005 before iTunes launched podcasting, right? So I went to Kinko's, I printed CDs, I had flyers, I had all kinds of stuff. And I wasted all my money. I wasted my money on renting a car, hotel, everything. I went to Los Angeles with only $20 for the week. So we were eating dollar burgers for the rest of the week, Yeah, it was a struggle, but you know what? That was the biggest investment and the smartest decision I made ever, because not only I got to meet people, they got to see me, and at the same time, it helped us build a relationship with all these companies, and look now, like it helped us big time. So yeah, it is a risk, but I think it's worth it. Super
Yeah,
worth it.
I think
You
that's
know?
kind of what do we say for podcasts are trying to make this decision? They're deciding it's $1,000, right? I'm going to shell out at least, and they're on the
Hmm.
fence, right? And they're hearing us say, well, you're going to meet people, you're going to build relationships. Is it a matter of what they want to get out of the future of their podcast? For you, were you trying to pick up relationships that would further you monetarily, or were you just going to meet friends? Right? How does a podcaster make that decision? They've got $1,000 in their hand.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When I went there, I was talking with a lot of companies, and they shut me down completely. Because first of all, I didn't have a media badge, so they wanted to talk to the media. So when I mentioned our numbers at that time, they were looking at me all crazy, like, So yeah, I was disappointed when I left. But guess what? A year after that, every company was hitting us up because now podcasting is the next big thing. iTunes started promoting that, and now every company wanted us to interview them. You know, now they know us, but at least I made opportunity. I wasn't even thinking about business, none of that stuff. I was doing this for fun, and eventually, yes, we started building a business after that. You know, but everything takes time. I feel that a lot of podcasters nowadays, they're like they see all these podcasters are making a lot of money, and they want to copy them or want to have like quick success. I think by doing the right way, being patient, and just having fun, eventually you're gonna get opportunities, everywhere. But if you're just doing it the wrong way, and especially following people that are giving you tips, that is killing the space, in my opinion. I don't support that. So when I went to podcast movement this past weekend, it was fun meeting you guys. I got inspired by a lot of people. Yeah, new and old. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I had a great conversation with Dave the first night. Great conversation with you too, Ray. I was trying to look for Daniel, but he was too busy.
I
But
barely, yeah, that was tough.
but
It's tough to find
but
everybody.
it is like I feel that when one person has an opportunity, it opens the door for a lot of people. So I've never competed with other podcasts ever. So we got to help each other out, give some tips, because if one person succeeds, we all succeed.
Yeah, Roman Mars in his one opening keynote, he said something that I thought was awesome. He said, "Oh, there goes Dave." He said, "80% of the world doesn't know what the f we do," and he actually said that word, and I'll keep us without the explicit tag. And his
Yeah.
whole point was, he said that we can kill each other later, and his whole point was to work together. Right? We're still so new, we're growing, and I mean, if you look at this show, that would never stop. I don't think Daniel and Dave and I are going to kill each other later once we've reached some goal and we're like, now I can take out Daniel's knees, right? Thanks for helping me get to where I was going. We found that this works much better as a community. So I thought that
Yeah.
was a good message. And, you can pull out little nuggets like that if you do have to pay attention. At the major keynotes, Mark Maron, Aisha Tyler, and all those, Sarah from Serial. I mean, that felt like pure entertainment to me. Like I just enjoyed them. But there were nuggets to be gleaned there. So,
Yeah.
experienced, not experienced, I think everyone can pull something out of these conferences. And well, let's see. Let's move on. Harry Hawk from talkingabout.everything.com. He pitched a couple of things that might be tough, right, as a podcast producer. And he says, you're contacted by a major podcast network. They want you to join them. Should you? I was saying for myself, this happens to me weekly, but on YouTube it happens. No, it really does happen on YouTube, because if you get X amount of subscribers on YouTube, automatically or views, they come knocking. And I've heard the top YouTubers say, do not go with these, their MMCs, or I forget what they're called, right?
There's
So
a lot of shitty ones.
yeah,
Out there. Yeah.
it's hard to know who to choose, all that stuff. And for me, I stay away, because I don't really see it has any advantage to me at this point with what I'm doing. But, we've got, Danny, I don't know if you have a network. Dave, you have a lot of shows.
I don't. I just joined a week before our 10th anniversary with Play It, the
That's
CBS
right.
radio network. And here's the thing: we had an opportunity that just popped up, and doing it independently for so long. I talked to my staff, and we were like, "Hey, let's make the move. Let's see what happens." The only thing that I was worried about was the RSS feed. I want that to be ours if anything happens. Creative control. I don't want people to be telling me what things to do. Especially the ads. Like, hey, if there's ads I don't like, I don't want to play that on our podcast. I don't want to make the listeners uncomfortable. And they were all cool about that. Yeah, there was papers that we had to agree with and stuff, but it took some time. But I think we made the right decision. This has been like the best year ever for us. So yeah, I mean, look, if a company, a network hits you up, do some research, and if you have a crew or a team, talk to them before you make that move. Yeah, I mean, just be careful. Like you said, there's a lot of YouTube networks out there that will contact YouTubers just based on their numbers and stuff, and then they sign, and they won't get paid. They won't get their checks. And these networks will hide. They won't contact you. They won't reply to you. None of that stuff. So just be really, really careful before signing anything. So
yeah, I would. That's what I'd say about the whole thing is be cautious when someone waives, not even money, but maybe the perception. You'll get more listens, more views, maybe a little more ad revenue, but think about what you're trading, right? I mean,
Yep.
What do you guys, Darrell, what do you think about? You have a network, but do you approach other podcasters? How does that work? How do you work with other podcasters to help make what may be a tough decision to join or not join?
Yeah, I mean, I think our network is structured quite a bit differently than the one that Danny is involved with. I mean, our network is really just TV and film. We have one exception to that, which is the podcast that I do called Stuff I Learned Yesterday, and I have another guy that does the show on Wednesdays. But we had a lot of us that are now part of the Golden Spiral Media Network. I mean, that's the network that I started, but it was just me and a couple of my friends for the longest time. And now you look, we have about, 20, 25 hosts on our network. And a lot of these guys came from what was once known as TV Talk, which was a network that was started. It was a great concept, had a lot of great talent along with it, and it just didn't work out. And so a lot of those guys were looking for a place to continue their show, and so we brought some of them over to Golden Spiral Media. I took Daniel's, he and I had a conversation at New Media Expo, I think 3 years ago, well before this TV Talk thing happened. It was just something that I was trying to think ahead of where we might be going down the road. And so our model at Golden Spiral Media, as far as host acquisition, is just if someone approaches me and they're interested, or I have someone that I think would be a good fit, we have a meeting and we talk it out, and we kind of let them. I want to hear their vision, what their passion is, and I want to share my vision for the network. And it's kind of like a job interview. I was in retail for almost 20 years, and for a good chunk of that, I had hiring and firing responsibilities. And an interview is always a two-way street. It needs to be a good fit for both parties. And so we kind of felt the same way with our network. We kind of have some meetings with people we think would be a good fit, and at the end of the day, both of us can walk away, and it's okay. But if we both feel like it's a good fit, then we'll start working together. So that's kind of how we evaluate who's going to be a part of the network. And then, like I said, the revenue part of it and how we're going to divvy that up was definitely, we just almost stole that directly from the way Daniel does his.
Good. Borrowed.
It was given.
With permission.
So, and then that previous one we talked about the conference, I want to give Gary Pierce from hamradionow.tv shout out for bringing up that tough decision topic in the chat before we actually got this thing rolling. Daniel, did you have?
Yeah, speaking of fitting together well in a network, there's also the tough decision of how you fit together well inside a podcast with your co-hosts. And this is a decision
I'm thinking about firing my co-hosts.
Wait.
Oh, that.
With me?
I keep asking for a raise. I'm sorry, Ray.
I feel like the disciples at the last meal. Lord, is it I? But I've had tough decisions
I'm a
in
Sith
the
Lord,
past.
right, by the way. That's a Sith. Okay, I just want to...
And currently face tough decisions about stuff with co-hosts. Like, I've had things before where a co-host has said, I'm not really into this anymore, I'd like to leave, and I feel like saying to them, no, you can't leave. And then there have been others who I've been thinking, like, this isn't really working out that well. And then they come to me and say, I don't think this is working out really well. And I'm like, oh, you think so? But there are those tough decisions when something just isn't working. Maybe it's schedule-wise. Maybe it's the dynamic between you two. Maybe it's the passion. One of you has lost the passion. I think that can be a really tough decision, especially if you count yourselves as friends outside of the podcast. To say, you know, I love you as a friend, but we don't work good together. That's a tough decision.
You know, change is hard, but eventually the listeners are going to get used to it, you know, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that change is one of those tough things that people mentioned. Seth Ressler from TasteTruckers.com, he said, when you've decided to make a major format change to your podcast, do you start a new podcast or do you continue with the existing feed, right? So at some point you're thinking, this doesn't really fit into my feed, but I don't want to sort of cut off that audience, right, or start over. And we talked about this in podcast formats a little bit, but I mean, anyone who wants to jump in on that is...
Yeah, well, when I started, my podcast was all about hip-hop and gaming. So what I used to do was I'll get independent artists from locally from Miami or from across the country. They'll send me their music, and I'll put it on our show as, like, during the halftime and stuff, right? And after a while, we decided to take it off because...
Wait, do you have halftime on your show?
No, not halftime, but like in the middle 30-minute mark.
Oh, you know, that's a good idea. I'm going to start having halftime. Like,
so we should do that a lot, and I had a lot of music artists too on our show too, like Snoop Dogg and Rum DMC, all those stuff. So because they're gamers too, so yeah, we after a while we stopped because we were having like issues, like the label didn't want us to play the music, or eventually, you know, with the whole CBS thing, I'm like, I don't want them to be, you know, in that situation, us playing music, and so we just removed that like 2-3 years ago, and I think we made the right decision. You know, I'm a huge music fan, you know, so that was killing me not playing it, you know, so.
I have one. Show of hands, and I realize this is an audio podcast. We'll take care of that in a moment. Show your hands if you have a Patreon page/campaign. I'm raising my hand. Darrell's is up. Dave's up. Daniel, I thought you did Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
2 of my podcasts are on Patreon.
So let's talk about that decision, or that kind of decision, right? I think most of us have probably had a PayPal button at some point. So is there any difference, or what do you think about when you sort of go out to your audience and start asking for money? Let's face it, that's what you're asking for.
When I started the donation model with my Once Upon a Time podcast, it was because a couple people were saying, hey, how can we donate to the show? I thought, seriously? You want to donate to us? And yeah, they did. And in fact, all of our bills for that podcast are being paid, and it does cost a lot to host a popular podcast. I'm nowhere near Gamertag Radio in popularity, but it's popular enough that it costs a lot more to host. And our audience has been great to jump on board and donate to that. But I set up this whole donation platform on our own website using Gravity Forms and PayPal and Stripe and SSL and all of this stuff. And then just at the end of this last TV season, made the decision that I want to shift everyone over to Patreon. It's a hard decision because we'll actually make 5% less money that way. And I even changed our Patreon model, which even instead of being per episode, we switched to per month. And we're not making as much that way, too, because of the way the switch occurs. But I think it was a decision that I was looking at, okay, what's the better thing to do for our community, to make this easy for them and to be able to have a platform to give them more value and make them feel more a part of something so they can see, oh, I'm the 13th contributor, not just know they're contributing in some black hole.
Anyone else? I mean, that decision to...
we started Patreon... I think it's been over a year ago. I was trying to think. I spoke with Rob Sesternino, who's, I think everybody knows Rob. He's so great, and he's killing it on Patreon. And I think we had a Patreon page set up even before I spoke with him. But I regret starting a Patreon campaign page for our network.
Interesting.
Very good.
Yeah, I think there are two things that we could have done better.
Darrell, we lose your video, by the way? I did. But
yeah.
Has everybody else lost it? It's been giving me...
Okay, no problem.
We can still hear you.
All right.
Darrell, before you go on, I want to just get a clarification from you.
Mm-hmm.
Is your regret that you're on Patreon or that you're on Patreon as a network?
I'll clarify that.
Okay.
So I think we could have done two things better. One would have been to create a Patreon page for every single show. And we're trying that. We actually have a Patreon page for Arrow Squad, for example, which is our fan podcast for Arrow on the CW. What I don't like about Patreon, we already had the PayPal thing going on. We were very much like Daniel in that regard. People were coming to us saying, we want to help support what you guys do, give you back for what you give to us value-wise through your podcast. And that was working well. We decided to do Patreon because it was this new shiny object, and it has the ability to create these tiered I don't know what the right word here, but
Milestones.
And
or
so
donation
people can
levels,
get different levels and get different kickbacks for their donation level, and it was just easy to do that, and it was easy to do that. Where I feel that I made the mistake was I thought I didn't do my due diligence, and I didn't realize that it's not a delivery mechanism. So if as a podcaster I want to be able to give my Patreon supporters unique, special, bonus content, not paid content, none of our main stuff. They're not paying for our main stuff, but bonus content. And there's no way to really deliver that through Patreon. And we wanted to get their feedback and allow them to choose what types of bonus content, vote on some things. And there's no way to do that. So the interaction between the Patreons and the us and the network is really lacking. There aren't really any strong tools for that. So what I found myself doing was sending them back to my website. Hey, go over here and submit or vote over here, and then go over here and make your donation, and then go over here and retrieve your bonus content. And it was just, Todd Cochran reminded me one day of just the basic 101 concept, and that is keep your audience on your website. And when he told me that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's 101 stuff I used to teach when I was in retail. Don't send people off your website, keep them on your website. And here I am sending people over to Patreon and making them go through all these hoops. And I've done a disservice to my audience when I've done that. So what we're working on is essentially a membership site where we're going to handle all the Patreon-like features on our website, and we'll be able to deliver the content through the website.
Can be a tough decision, right, Dave? You run a member website.
Oh, membership sites are fun.
Not without its headaches.
Oh, yeah. Forgot my password. Can't log in. PayPal changed my credit card. Yeah, it's
I understand those. I just want to keep my audience on my website and be able to do everything in one location, even if that means I get more administrative headaches.
Well, for the sake of debate, because we do like to stir it up, if possible, on the roundtable, does anyone disagree with that? Did you need to keep the audience on your website?
Well, no,
Not that it's wrong.
I don't disagree with that. What I do disagree with is keep them on your website, even if it kills you. Because I think there is a point where your podcast will suffer if you're trying to do too much on your own platform, unless you can hire someone to do it for you and put things together for you. And that's why I decided to switch things, because I knew I really needed to spend my time on more important stuff than trying to administer a membership platform and all of this. I would love to have it all on my site. I know how to do that kind of thing, or I can figure it out. I just didn't want to spend the time in that because I'm self-employed. Every minute is precious. So for me to try to test plugins and stuff, that's wasting my time, really, when I could do something better and then focus on producing great content.
Well, I would like to say this very quick, because a couple of years ago we launched an app with Libsyn, and that helped us out a lot. I think that was a pretty cool idea to release our content through there, and we had exclusive content just for the app. So that's a different way instead of just doing everything on the website, So make it easier for everyone, man. Be everywhere instead of just thinking the old way is just iTunes and a website, So.
Very cool. Yeah. So, I mean, there's tough decisions when it comes to co-host. I see a lot of people in the chat saying they went through a co-host change and it was really tough. Callie Lewis, who is now, her real name is actually Luria Pertucci. I hope I'm saying that right. We're so used to Callie. She was at NMX and I got to hang out with her. And, Randy Cantrell was telling us about, her breakup with her co-host and original partner and formed a new network, and very tough decisions, right? Especially once you've built up a solid brand. I mean, she had a very solid brand, went from a hobbyist to a professional, and then decided to break all that up. So it can be very tough once that ball gets rolling and you pick up some steam, right? And that may be part of the problem with letting go of a show. You're like, I've built this thing. I'm not really into it, but how can I let that go, right? Dave, you've had so many podcasts. Have you ever built up one that was going good that you decided,
I have one right now. The Logical Weight Loss podcast I've been doing for probably 5 years. It's hilarious because it's just my travels of losing weight and gaining weight and losing weight. It's supposed to be a weight loss podcast, and people get inspired by me. Apparently, I don't get inspired by me. And there's a tool that you can have your iTunes rankings emailed to you at reganstar.com, star with 2 R's. And it's a top 50 podcast, in iTunes. Now, again, iTunes isn't all that, but it's still kind of going, well, you know what? That's not too shabby.
In your niche?
In my niche, yeah.
I was going to be like,
in
wow,
like
you're in
categories.
fitness?
Yeah, in my category. And I'm really starting to, I'm on that slope where I'm just like, A, I feel like I have no integrity, right? And then B, it's just like, how many times can you say eat less and exercise more? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, all right, time to
switch it. It's time to rebrand and call it the Yo-Yo Podcast.
That's right. And so that's one where, it's kind of like I can smell the pod fade coming, and I'm like, So I need to find either A, I need to change my own lifestyle and get back into fitness, which is what I did at the beginning of the year. But yeah, we've had you want to go real? You want to go real life? How about the time you, me, and Daniel went, we should put together some sort of training material. And we all went, maybe later.
Yeah, who wants to start? Who wants to take the lead on that?
Yeah, because that's one where it gets real icky real quick.
Yeah, we can make this real ugly real fast, right?
Yeah.
That's when I am going to take Daniel out at the knees.
Hey, remember, I'm the black belt here.
You're the what?
I'm the black belt, unless Danny has something.
Well, I might have my Ralph Macchio moment and come up with a crane technique and get a lucky shot. But anyways, I wanted to do this one before we head out because we are about ready to go and let the awesome live audience go about their lives. But has anyone declined a good opportunity given to them because of whatever reason? And I'm sure that was a tough decision.
Yeah, in the past, I've been getting companies hitting us up for sponsors. As a matter of fact, there was also a very popular podcaster. I'm not going to mention his name. He wanted to advertise on our show, and I declined. It's cool, we get money and stuff, but to me, money comes and goes. I think building that trust that built throughout the years with our listeners, I don't want to break that. I don't want to fake it and start promoting crap on our show. So and eventually too, we travel a lot. Companies fly us to different places around the world, to their studios for us to check out their games before it comes out. I always mention to our listeners, it was EA games that flew us to so and so, and because I feel that a lot of podcasters will say and get that quick money, but to me, without the community, without your listeners, you're nobody. Nobody's gonna start downloading your podcast. They don't trust you anymore. So you gotta be really, really careful with that stuff, man. Even if it's a lot of money, man. And in the past, I declined a lot of companies. I wasn't comfortable at all with it. So.
Cool. Well, as it says behind you, choose happiness, right? Not cash.
Yeah, right.
Money can't buy you happiness. It's love, but it can be very tough, especially when money gets involved. I think we've heard that as a common theme in these tough decisions, because it's nice to be able to feed yourself and podcast and not choose between the two. But we'll head on out of here. as we go, one plug, right? Because you just we don't have forever, and this is a prolific group of podcasters. There's so many podcasts here to be plugged. But pick a plug. Tell us where we can find you, basically. And let's see, comment coming in. I just want to make sure. All right, we're good. All right, and we'll go out if you have any last, advice for podcasters making tough decisions. Feel free to go ahead and dole that out, and we will say good evening. Whoever wants to go first. I'm gonna put Daniel in the hot seat. He's a co-host. We can toss to him. He's a pro. Daniel, thanks for joining us for another round.
Thank you. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from theaudacitytopodcast.com, launching something really cool really soon. When you're facing a really hard decision, here are a couple tips. First of all, hey, if you are a Christian, like I am, pray about it. Pray seriously, I mean it. But really, give yourself, this is the best decision-making advice I've ever heard before. Think about it, yes, but give yourself a deadline to make that decision. The bigger the decision, the more time you need. And during that time, yes, let yourself flip-flop, talk to people you trust. But during that time, gather the information, start thinking about, would I regret this in the future? What would I think in the future? But when it comes down to that deadline, that's the point when you need to make a decision and then stick with it.
Very cool. As always. Thanks, Daniel. All right, well, that puts us in order. That means, Danny, I want to thank you for being a first-time roundtabler, but not new to the community. You rock, man. Again, great to meet you in person. And,
Thanks,
once a roundtabler, always a roundtabler. So we will see you back. You have a lot to share.
Definitely, man. You guys are cool, man. Very, very cool and humble and stuff, man. So got some good energy, positive energy with you guys, man. So, gamertagradio.com. Check our podcast if you're into gaming and stuff. And change is hard. I know change is hard, but if it's change that's gonna make your podcast even better, go for it. Make that change. And another thing too, please guys, stop following trends. It's okay. You don't have to follow trend to be successful. All right. And that's it. Just want to say that very quick, man. And thanks a lot for inviting me, man. Had a blast.
My pleasure. We work so together. Maybe we should start an interview show with each other.
Yeah.
Maybe ignite some.
You just interview each other over and over.
Level.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Now maybe that's a trend I won't go with. I'll pass it up. For now, I'll do it when it's not cool anymore. Huh? That's the
Someone's gonna have to die.
We were the podcasters that made podcasting cool. So stop following trends, be the leader, and you start the own trend instead of following other trends.
Yeah, I love it. I do something different. Do something I've never seen. Please, it's completely open. Please experiment, and hopefully we've done a little bit of that here. But it's just a round table. But we try. So we're free to do anything we want. Speaking of doing anything you want, Dave Jackson, thanks for joining us again. He's a rogue. We never know what Dave's going to do. He could quit this podcast tomorrow.
That's right. I'm done dropping the mic. No, Dave Jackson, schoolofpodcasting.com. Sign up because now I'm going to need the money. But here's my advice. Any bad decisions that I've made have usually happened when I'm running more on emotion than logic. So if somebody says something in an email, if it's a co-host or something like that, and you're ready to just flame out on this person, we're all 10 feet tall and bulletproof behind email. So anything like that where somebody's got your goat and the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, definitely sleep on that bad boy and think about it. When in doubt, do the Ben Franklin, which is where you draw a line down the middle, pros on one side, cons on the other, write them out, count them up, flip your coin, and jump on in.
Right on. Did you plug, Dave?
Schoolofpodcasting.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I know you had a tough decision there. I think you made the right decision for yourself, and I'm excited to see what will happen next year. And don't worry, your job is safe here, Dave.
That's right.
Where the big money is. A round table. Checks in the mail.
That's it.
Thanks again. Darrell, first-time roundtabler, but again, long-time friend. Long time is an interesting word in the internet because it doesn't take long to do. I mean, time is short, but long on the internet. I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying. We've known each other for at least a year, and it's been a good time. And you're an award-winning podcaster yourself, So thanks for sharing your insights, and I'm sure we'll have you back. And yeah, thanks again.
My pleasure, man. I've been wanting to be on this for years. This
Oh.
is the first time I met you, Ray, was when you dissed my podcast in front of a whole room of podcasters.
We had a very interesting first meeting.
It was wonderful. I'm serious. I tell that story, and I love telling it because you were absolutely right. That's a story for another day.
Yeah, it is a story for another day. It's a good one.
I am an award-winning podcast, but I don't have an award. That was the year they didn't have enough funding to actually give trophies away. So Daniel, one day I'd like to actually see what they look like. But I'm Darrell Darnell, ProPodcastSolutions.com. It's been my pleasure and honor to be on this with you guys. Thank you for inviting me. And my advice is just to make the decision. You know, like Daniel said, Dave said, great advice. But at some point, you do have to make that decision. Don't keep putting it off. Make the decision and move forward, because you're not going to move forward until you make that decision.
Awesome. And classy little podcast. Emily, I believe I'm bad with names. We met her at Podcast Movement. She said she burned dinner because of this roundtable. So maybe it's a bad decision to cook dinner. But hey, worth it. So you made the right decision. You did it. So if that's you, if you're like Darrell, and I didn't know if you wanted to be on here for years, we have been around for a couple years. Make sure you bug me. Let me know. Sign up, podcastersroundtable.com/guest. You'll be on the list. You can submit ideas. I pull from there, and it helps to bug me. Why not? Because, it can be short notice, and sometimes the squeaky wheel gets is it the oil? What's that?
Grease.
Grease.
Yeah.
See? And
Squeaky
that's why
wheel gets the worm.
So they'll take that. That's why you have co-host or not. Tough decision. Maybe they'll be back. All right, Podcasters Roundtable 55. Thanks so much. We'll see you on 56. We're out of here. Wave goodbye, everybody. Hasta la vista.